Good afternoon. I am Andrea Chisholm with the Midday News. A special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. Industrial action taken by teachers has almost crippled public and primary high schools across the island, forcing some parents to put plans in place to accommodate their children. Details in this report. School is out, and images like these confirmed it. Students and parents from several schools across the island had to make different plans as teachers kept their promise and stayed off the job. Bad timing, as some students are preparing to sit the Grade 6 Achievement Test GSAT as well as CSEC exams. Teachers are upset the government decided to pay a 16% wage increase over 4 years, even though the Jamaica Teachers Association rejected the offer. One parent whose child attends a school in the corporate area has agreed with the position taken by teachers.
We need to do some more for the teachers, likewise for the self-employed. That's me, yes, and the rest of parents of Jamaica. If it was for the teacher, probably I wouldn't be standing here talking to you. So I'm spelling my name, so they need to get paid. You got what I'm saying? They are your gatekeepers, and if you let them loose, you will find a revolution.
Over in St. Elizabeth, approximately 80% of teachers fail to turn up for classes. At the Glen Stewart Primary School, TVJ News understands there was a 90% non-attendance by teachers. Meanwhile, in St. Catherine, some schools opened their doors to students even though they have been impacted by industrial action. Here's TVJ's OSHANE Masters with that report.
A big blow to the educational sector on Monday as many teachers stayed away from the classroom. However, some schools in St. Catherine tried to accommodate their students. Principal of Spanish Town Primary, Marva Guest, says about 7 of the 35 teachers turned up for work at the school, which operates on a shift system. Ms. Guest says the students were supervised until parents were informed about the suspension of classes.
Children, they have marched in, we can't turn them back. So what we have done, we have used our initiative and we have grouped according to grade. Grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and we have prefects who are on ground who are monitoring at the moment. Some parents have come in and they have taken their children. We have no problem with that, but we have to hold strain on those who are here. We can't send them back out in the community, especially since it's a volatile community.
She was, however, concerned about the impact of the Sickout on students who will be sitting the Grade 6 Achievement Test this month.
Some of them have turned up. They are sitting in class doing some GSAT work on their own. It's not sufficient, but given the situation, there's nothing more that can be done.
In the meantime, Principal of MCCAULEY Primary in Spanish Town, St. Catherine, CLAUDIA BYER, decided not to send the students home.
I know parents would have gone to work and therefore I could not have sent home back parents' children. And so the few teachers who came in, along with myself, we had to decide on what we were going to do. And so I had to prepare the teachers, and as much as possible, I assigned teachers to students. I had a lot of glitches, I must say, yes, because there are many teachers who are not here today.
A parent with 2 children at the institution thanked the principal for taking care of the children.
I'm loving her right now. I'm loving my principal because no school get right now, padlock up, and we are proud of her today. We are proud of her.
OSHANE Masters, TVJ News.
Meanwhile, the Education Ministry says their contingency plans have been working. Director of Corporate Communications at the Ministry, Colin Steer, provided an update.
Okay, what I can say is that the Ministry has deployed support personnel to support the contingency plan, and in a number of places they definitely are in place. In some places, there are teachers who have indicated different levels of action or inaction, and that had its own challenges.
And the Education Ministry this morning sent out a reminder to schools, board chairs and principals and regional technical directors about the process of applying for casual or personal days as well as sick leave. The bulletin, which was sent out under the signature of Chief Education Officer Dr. Grace McLean, stated that the regulations should be adhered to as the ministry tries to keep schools operational. The ministry reminded teachers that application for casual leave must be done done in writing and submitted in advance or at the earliest possible time after the date is taken. For sick leave, applications exceeding 3 consecutive school days must be supported by a medical certificate. In other news, the Independent Commission of Investigations INDECOM is raising alarm over the failure of the Jamaica Constabulary Force JCF to use body cameras during operations. The issue was raised in INDECOM's quarterly report tabled at the recent sitting of the House of Representatives. INDECOM said of the 30 planned police operations, which resulted in 41 deaths in 2017, no body-worn cameras were deployed. INDECOM adds that no body cameras were deployed from planned stationary vehicle checkpoints, and there were 16 related deaths. The oversight body adds that body-worn cameras would begin to address suspicions involving police shootings and create an operating environment to begin restoring trust in the JCF. A land dispute in Hampstead, St. Mary has resulted in 2 men being killed, one of whom was murdered by a mob in the community. The men have been identified as 79-year-old Charles Patterson and 55-year-old Winston Henry. Residents claim they heard gunshots on Friday night but did their checks and it didn't reveal anything. On Saturday morning, Mr. Patterson's daughter went to the house explaining that the neighbors were also making checks.
This when I get the call now, I left out this morning and go up there. People in village, whole village have to say, come behind me. And at them, I don't know who find him, right? At the gate. At the gate, they find him all now. I don't go look at my father. Couldn't look. I couldn't look. All now, I don't see him. You guess they're dead. They shoot him.
News of Mr. Patterson's death angered some residents who then accused Mr. Henry, with whom Mr. Patterson had a long-running land dispute, of killing him. The accused was tied up, beaten, and set ablaze. The police and fire brigade responded but were delayed because of the bad roads. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions has explained why Moravian pastor Rupert Clark was sentenced to 8 years in prison after pleading guilty to sexual-related offenses. The 64-year-old was charged with 2 counts of having sexual intercourse with a person under the age of 16 years. Under the Sexual Offences Act, an adult may be sentenced to a minimum of 15 years or even life in prison if found guilty of such offence. Assistant Director of Public Prosecutions Adley Duncan said the sentencing for Mr. Clark was fair.
I do understand that members of the public who may not have all the information, they're outraged by it because it's something that will evoke disgust, and disgust is a powerful emotion. The judge, of course, is not permitted to be emotional. We're all human beings, and neither are we. Exactly. We're all human beings, but the judge, members of the public, would not put their emotions aside. Their jobs don't require that. A judge's job does require that.
He added that the guilty plea contributed to the 8-year sentence for the Moravian pastor.
So at the time the pastor pleaded guilty was when the very last document came in. He had said not guilty first. He wasn't called upon to plead. So when it's meant, when you're coming before court to representation to be sorted out, you know, medical to come on the file, statements to come in, you're not called upon to plead until the day of trial. And these were not trial dates, these were all what we call mention dates. So he was not called upon to plead, but on the very last mention date in the St. Elizabeth Circuit Court, he elected to plead guilty. Good. So indictments, of course, are on the file. We present the indictment, and when the indictment is presented, he elects to plead guilty.
4 years and the bill to provide the prosecution with the right to appeal has just been drafted. Director of Public Prosecutions DPP Paula LLEWELLYN had called on the government to join other Caribbean courts in providing the prosecution with the right to appeal. Speaking on TVJ's Smile Jamaica on Monday, Ms. LLEWELLYN says there seems to make some headway.
Speech by the Governor General that they are going to look at it legislatively. Thanks a lot.
Now, TVJ News will conclude the RGR Gleaner Don Anderson polls this evening during primetime news. If an election is called soon, Who would most Jamaicans vote for? That question will be answered when the party standings are revealed this evening during the primetime news package. In news overseas, at least 49 people were killed when a plane approached the runway from the wrong direction, crashed and burst into flames while landing at an airport in Nepal this morning. 40 bodies were recovered at the scene, 9 died in hospital, and 22 survivors are receiving treatment in hospital. There were 71 passengers on the plane, including the crew. The aircraft's 2 recorders, the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder, have both been recovered. Still overseas, just days after U.S. President Donald Trump announced he will be holding talks with North Korea, preparations are already underway. South Korea has dispatched envoys to China and Japan to get their support for the meeting.
North Korea has yet to officially respond to President Trump's announcement that he would be willing to hold an historic face-to-face meeting with the leader of North Korea. Now, South Korea has been put in the slightly uncomfortable position of trying to explain Pyongyang's silence. So you've heard from South Korea's unification ministry suggesting that North Korea is practicing caution at this point and organizing its stance in response to what could really be a seismic change here on the Korean Peninsula. And in comments on Monday, the South Korean President Moon Jae-in said as much, saying that this could be a precious opportunity to establish a lasting peace here on the Korean Peninsula, urging different factions and political wings here in South Korean society to overcome their differences to try to seize this chance towards possible denuclearization here on the Korean Peninsula. Now, South Korea has also been sending envoys, top officials to Beijing, to Tokyo, to try to explain the diplomacy that is now underway.
And in sports, Waterhouse stretched their unbeaten run to 6 games after edging former champions Montego Bay United 2-1 at the Jerusalem Mini Stadium. Andre McFarlane opened the scoring in the 19th minute, but that was cancelled out by Leslie St. Fleur 10 minutes later. Alan Otti then beat the hands that used to feed him by slotting home just before the hour mark. With the win, Waterhouse are now in 4th position on 47 points, the same as 3rd place Tivoli and a point behind Arnett Gardens.
So it was a good game for us, but difficult one, and it's a very important 3 points for us, which will put us in the right direction, give us a little bit of breathing space for a run to top 6.
I think defensively we did well, and we certainly competed equally, but this is a team on their home ground fighting for their spot as well, and offensively I don't think we created the quality chances that you have to beat a team like this on the roads.
Over at the Mona Bowl, host UWI moved into 7th with 42 points and 2 behind 6th place Cavalier, who they clipped 2-1. The Marcel Gale coached team stormed into a 2-0 lead inside 25 minutes. Anthony Greenland got UWI off the mark in the 12th minute, and that was doubled by former Cavalier player Ryan Miller. Siobhan Marsh found a late consolation 8 minutes from time.
Good game for us, good start. Getting 2 goals before halftime was very good. And after that, they had to adjust their game plan a little bit. So that kind of worked for us, where we could play within the transitions, just get the ball beyond their attacking line and then try to create some chances. We got some good looks at the goal in the second half, but we couldn't score. Unfortunately, we gave up a goal at the end, but we managed to win, which is very good.
We just made some poor marking decision at the back in the early part of the game and conceded 2. I mean, we even got the first goal to score and didn't score it. So, you know, being 2 down, I think you did their best to try and manage the game. In the second half, we kind of changed how we play, and we definitely came back and started to press them. You know, for the majority of the second half, we got 1 goal, but the second one just eluded us.
And that's the Midday News. I'm Andrea Chisholm. Join us at 7 for the Primetime News Package. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, good afternoon.